You know what would have been funny? If Mary Walsh would have gotten all dressed up in her aging outfit and stormed into Parliament when her boss, Hubert Lacroix, was giving his pompous answers before Parliament. That I would have laughed at without a laugh track. Of course, that's a little too edgy for them at the CBC. They don't go after leftist bureaucrats, just conservatives who they don't like. Joining me today is a conservative I do like, my friend Brian Lilley, host of the great show Byline right here on the Sun News Network. Hey, Brian, thanks for being on the show.
Always a pleasure, Ezra. Always. And I don't dress up like a Viking warrior princess, and I won't attack you. Don't worry.
You know, I do, but only in the privacy of my own home. Speaking of the privacy of your home, I mean, listen, when we're getting up early in the morning, the last thing we need to see is Mary Walsh screaming at you on your own driveway. I mean, surely there are some limits to where the CBC can go. How about private property of a public figure, for one?
I think Rob Ford was rather restrained in not decking them as they stormed towards him as he's trying to put his kids. If I was putting my kids on the school bus or putting them in the car, I'd consider doing that. But that's, I mean, you're storming at somebody. That was just beyond the pale.
You know what? I wonder if the CBC will release all the footage from their cameras. I'd love to see the interaction. I bet the mayor was restrained. I bet he said, "Get off my property," and I bet they didn't answer. If I was the mayor, I'd sue them for trespass. I mean, I wouldn't. It's not a 911 criminal thing. I'd sue them in civil court for trespass. I'd get the whole footage of those tapes, and I'd say, and I'd show the world the kind of thuggery at the CBC. Speaking of the CBC thuggery, let's go straight to Parliament Hill. Now, you and I want accountability for taxpayers. And today, Hubert Lacroix, the president of the CBC, was there, and he said something so gob-stopping that we just got to show you. Here's the first clip. Brian, why don't you set this up about what he actually had the gall to say to MPs today about accountability?
Well, he's before the Heritage Committee today talking about his 5-year plan, and he was asked about job cuts and access to information. He said, well, we're going to be open. We're open. That's what he claimed. Here it is.
Should government, in its quest to balance its books, choose to take dollars away from us, from our government appropriation, that will not deter us from the 3 priorities that we have, which you heard: more national, more regional, and more digital. All of that in an environment of transparency and accountability.
Transparency and accountability.
Transparency and accountability. What is it, opposite day over there? You know, it takes chutzpah, and I noticed he didn't make eye contact with the camera when he said that, because it's just tough to say something so brazen while you're making eye contact. But there was someone else on Parliament Hill today who heard that and was a little bit shocked. Why don't you tell me what the next clip is, and if it comes down to these 2 people, who we should trust?
Well, the next was Suzanne Legault, and she was speaking earlier at a different committee, at the Ethics and Access to Information Committee, the one that's examining the CBC and their problems with being open and accountable, of offering transparency and openness. And she told our cameras that, and the committee, that she was shocked to find out that they're not even looking into access to information requests anymore if they think that it touches on their exclusions of creative journalistic or programming sources, such as, say, George Stroumboulopoulos' party. Then they just say, we're not looking up. We're not going to see if there's anything in the documents we can look it up. We're just putting it aside and refusing it. She said this was shocking and against the spirit of the Access to Information Act. Here we go.
I said that I'm concerned with their guidelines, which I just became aware of in preparation for this committee meeting, and which seems to indicate that they would make a decision on the application of the exclusion under Section 68.1 on the face of the wording of the request itself. And if that's the case, and they do this without retrieving the records and without processing all the records and without applying appropriate severances under the legislation, then I'm seriously concerned.
So just to clarify for our viewers, that lady we just clipped there, she's not a partisan, she's not an MP, she is a non-partisan information commissioner whose job it is to get agencies to comply with the law. She gave the CBC an F, and if I'm understanding correctly, she's saying that the CBC isn't even retrieving the information to say, oh, can we give it out or not. They're not even applying the law.
They look at what you ask for and they decide then. They don't go and get the 20 pages or the 100 pages and say, oh, well, we can release this, but we've got to say no to these 4 lines here because that, we can't be releasing that and that's allowed under the law. If your request touches on it, boom, it's gone. Now, she's the Federal Information Commissioner. That is she's on par with the Auditor General, the sainted Sheila Fraser, And that's the level that she's at. That's who they're fighting in court.
Brian, I tell you, if it was any cabinet minister, any other government agency that took that kind of cavalier approach to the law, heads would roll. There would be outrage in Parliament and outrage by the CBC. But when it's themselves that's getting the F and access to information, they don't care. Now, we got one more clip here, and it's a quick clip. Let's roll it, and then you and I can talk about what it means. Here's Hubert Lacroix answering a question in a scrum today.
What's your response to the demand letter from Quebecor?
The facts speak for themselves, and that's where they are.
The facts speak for themselves.
Now, that was in response to a question about, remember I said that the CBC launched a political campaign against Quebecor, alleging that we got a $333 million government subsidy, when in fact Quebecor paid $555 million to the government for a cell phone license. The CBC lied. They said that we got a subsidy when, in fact, we were the highest paying bidder at an auction, a public auction, for cell phone licenses. So Quebecor served them with a legal notice, and he's just saying, oh, the facts speak for themselves. What do the facts say, Brian?
I think the facts agree with your view and with my view, and I don't think that's just because we work for Quebecor. Look, you and I believe, both spoke out against federal funding going towards an arena that Pierre-Carl Péladeau and Quebecor are involved in. If that doesn't prove that we can write and say what we want, nothing does.
Yeah.
But the CBC said we got a subsidy when the company actually paid money. It goes back to your comment about it being opposite day for Hubert Lacroix.
It's their attempt to smear us, to say, oh, you can't criticize our $1.1 billion bailout because you got a bailout too. But the fact is, at Quebecor, we don't get bailouts. We pay money to the government that the CBC lives off. Brian, we got to keep talking about this until we stop this mega corporation called the CBC from getting their annual bailout again and again. I'm part of the Occupy I'm part of the 99%. Brian, I'm against the bailouts for the 1% like
Are you going to occupy CBC?
I'm going to try that again. I tried that once, and they sent forced security on me. Anyway, my friend, we got to say goodbye. I'll look forward to your show tonight.
Thanks.